Welcome to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX. Here are your hosts, the Radio Vagabond, Palle and TBEX CEO Rick Calvert.
Welcome to Travel Matters. Right now, I'm in a heat wave in Lisbon. It's crazy. It's 35 degrees Celsius, so I think 95 Fahrenheit or something like that. It's, for me, as a Scandinavian, that's a lot.
I can never get the Celsius Fahrenheit conversion, but I think 35 might be 100.
I looked it up. I Googled it.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah, but it's hot. But for you in close to San Diego, you're used to that kind of weather.
Let's see. So it's early morning for me now. It's 61. Our high will be 87 today.
Okay. So a bit cooler than here. Yeah. And I'm staying at a guest house without aircon. So I just got a fan today. So that makes my life a little bit more bearable. But I'm just sitting at my computer, just pouring sweat. It's so hot.
This is one of the differences, if you travel in Europe versus the States. In the U.S., there's air conditioning everywhere. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of places in Europe that don't have air conditioning.
Rick, can I just say something as a professional radio person?
Yeah.
Can you please put the pen away?
Oh. Wow. I didn't know my mic was that good.
Anyway, you're busy packing because you're moving to Utah next week?
Next Friday is the day.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and we have to visit family. We have a lot of family here. So we were away from home for the last couple of days, and then tomorrow they're having a party for us. And
by the way, that's why this episode is a few days late. It's because you had to visit family.
We were by the beach, and sorry, guys.
Yeah, so we didn't have time to sit down. But yeah, that's what happened when life gets in the way. But yes. I'm sure people can forgive us for that,
especially after being very sporadic for 2 years during COVID. So
a few days,
pretty good now.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, this episode will be worth the wait because we have two amazing guests on this one. And later in the episode, we have the infamous Michael Collins back on the show, and he did a session in Marbella, Spain, that you actually got to sit in and listen to.
About half of his session, it was a fantastic talk. I think I sent like 3 or 4 tweets quoting him, basically saying, Google's evil. That's not quite what he said, but, explaining what do the changes to cookies mean for all of us and the way that Google and Facebook track us and what are the implications of that when cookies basically go away. And Michael, as always, has great information to share that's really helpful for both creators and for brands and DMOs.
Yeah. So
we love talking to him.
Yeah. But first, we have Francis Tapon on, and I got to know him at Marbella, and since the TBEX in Marbella, we speak almost every day now, and we've become chums, and he's giving me a lot of tips on my upcoming trip to Africa because he's been to all of them.
He's writing a book on Africa, right?
With 54 chapters. That's right.
One for every country.
Yeah, and the way he travels is just unbelievable. By the way, he was a guest on the podcast called Counting Countries. So if you want to listen to more about how he travels and some of his travel stories, you should go and find Counting Countries with our good friend Rick Kazarian, that I also got to know at a TBEX in Manila, by the way. And he does a great podcast, and Francis was on there, and what an amazing traveler.
And Francis is also a podcaster, right? Didn't Francis have you on his podcast?
Yeah, he spoke to me. He's got his own podcast called Wonderlearn, where it's not only about travel, but it's he shares some amazing insights. And he's done, I think, 3 TEDx talks, and every time he goes on stage, it's something interesting. And that was the same thing for TBEX, right?
It was his first TBEX, his first time speaking at TBEX. I learned that Francis is a Harvard graduate, which is just a whole different level. He's a very, very, very smart guy and a very accomplished traveler, travel writer, and travel creator. So I also spent quite a bit of time talking to him at the conference. We don't talk every day like you guys are best buddies now, but we have spoke several times via social media back and forth, and I'm following him on Facebook now, and he just shares interesting things.
Yeah.
He has very interesting content, and he thinks about things a little bit differently than most people.
He does. Yeah. So let's dive into the conversation with Francis Tapon.
All right, so our next guest is Francis Tapon. Did we say it Tapon, or you pronounce it a different way?
You can say tampon without the M.
Okay. It's going to be one of those episodes. So, Francis, we're really glad that you're here. It's your first TBEX ever.
Yes, I've lost my virginity here.
So, well, first let's take one step back. For people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got started in travel.
So my mom is from Chile, my father's French, and I was born in San Francisco. So as a result, I have like 3 passports. So I think I was kind of born to travel in that sense. And I never had both sides of my family in one table. But as a little child, I would go to Chile and I'd go to France. This is back in the 70s when travel was a big deal at that kind of distance. And I went to an international school, French school. So a lot of the people in San Francisco were international. So all these things, I think, planted the seed.
Led you down the path.
And then eventually I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2001. And that, when I was walking, I was asking myself, because I was fortunate enough, I'll backtrack a little bit, I went to Harvard Business School. And there
He's a Harvard guy.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Oh, we're in over our heads here.
But there they teach you how to make $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
But they don't talk about what do you do once you have $1 billion. What do you do with your time? And
so what are you doing with your $1 billion, Francis?
right. And so I thought to myself, well, here I am on the Appalachian Trail, and I had a lot of time. I had 4 months to think. And what would I do if I had $1 billion?
So you did the trail in 4 months.
Correct.
Okay.
And so I said, okay, if I had $1 billion, I would keep traveling. I would keep hiking these trails and stuff like that. So I said, wait a second, I don't need $1 billion.
You're already doing it.
I'm already doing it. It doesn't take $1 billion.
Are you listening, Jeff Bezos? Okay.
Exactly, right.
So if you want to go to the moon, Francis, you need $1 billion.
Exactly. Yeah, actually a few $1 billion.
If you want to hike,
yeah.
you just need a pair of boots.
Exactly. So as a result, that's kind of that was the catalyst, is the Appalachian Trail that kind of set me off. Then I wrote a book called Hike Your Own Hike, and that kind of made me realize that this is not a profitable way to make money. There are better ways as an MBA from Harvard to make money.
Yeah.
But this is what I love to do, and I want to be on my deathbed. I don't know if I'm going to have cancer at 45, 50, 60 years old and just keel over and die or get hit by a car. So I don't want to be at that stage where all of a sudden I made $1 billion or whatever, and then
never did what you wanted to do.
Right.
So how much do you travel now?
I travel full time, so I haven't pretty much stopped much since 2006. So I started in 2006. I did the Appalachian Trail in 2001. Then I went to Eastern Europe for 6 months, and it was in 2006 when I did the Pacific Crest Trail that's when I decided I'm quitting Microsoft. At the time I was working for Microsoft. I was like, okay, I'm never looking back.
And so do you have a home base, or you're like Palle,
My
you're
mom's
just
house.
nomad, you go from
Yeah,
place to place?
I'm almost as bad as Palle.
Okay.
No, you're worse, because we spoke this morning, and we were talking about traveling in Africa. I was there earlier this year, did 5 countries there, and now I'm going back doing 5 more. But you've done all the countries in Africa, and that's just a huge project.
Right. Yeah, so kind of the thing I did after doing the Continental Divide Trail, I walked from Mexico up the Continental Divide, which is the Rocky Mountains, to Mexico, and then I turned around and walked all the way back. Nobody had ever done that before, and that kind of put me on the map as a hiking nuthead. And so then they said, okay, I've kind of conquered that domain of backpacking and long distance hiking. That was 7 months of hiking, 1,000 kilometers of snow. Now what can I do next? Oh, I'll go to Eastern Europe. So I spent 3.5 years in Eastern Europe. So I stayed very focused on my travel. Like, instead of bopping all over the world for 3.5 years, I said, I'm just going to be in Eastern Europe, 25 countries there. And then I said 5 years in Africa. All 54 African countries, climb the tallest mountain of each country and capture that.
I just want to step back. You said climb the tallest mountain. Are you a mountain climber?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I do. I mean, I haven't done the biggest mountains of the world, which are all in Nepal. In fact, I've never been to Nepal.
Yeah.
But I climb mountains. Some of them very few require ropes.
Yep.
Most of them you can just hike up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you haven't done a lot of stuff where you need real technical gear.
I've done some, but not a lot. No.
So there's no way I could climb Everest. That's the one that
Everybody
tallest
wants.
mountain in the world. Everybody
I got
wants
no
to do.
ambition on even
Yeah, I have
trying.
no ambition to do it. I'm not in shape. I couldn't do it. But the thing that gets me with Everest is you see people who are, not to mention that there's traffic jams climbing the mountain,
yeah.
which is just unbelievable. Right. That people can be in the best shape in the world
and die
from an edema, pulmonary or cerebral edema,
avalanche.
Yeah,
Ice.
But an avalanche is a
it's a fluke.
But it's a natural disaster.
Correct.
The edema is your body just saying you shouldn't be doing this.
No more.
Yeah, we're dead.
Right.
We give up.
Right.
And I don't want to roll those dice.
Right.
So you got to be a very, very determined person with a very specific goal, or I don't know what you call it.
A nuthead?
Yeah. But the Pacific Trail, that a lot of people have done that.
Correct.
Not the way that you did it, but you can. That's one that I'm looking at doing in stages because I couldn't leave for months at a time.
Right.
But that's one of my goals is to do the Pacific Coast Trail.
Right.
And if I get that goal done, then maybe the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
So, but climbing Everest, that's a whole different thing. You're risking your life to do that.
Right. And there's risk in everything, but certainly Everest is a higher risk for sure.
Are you into that kind of travel? Have you done things like, I might die doing this, but I'm doing it anyway?
Well, yes. I mean, I've been in many situations where I could have died. I was in Africa. I was in Madagascar, climbing up the tallest mountain of Madagascar. I was literally holding on to a little piece of vegetation.
Definitely dangerous.
And I was holding on to this piece of vegetation. If that vegetation had pulled out, that little piece of grass that I was holding on to, I would have fallen probably, maybe not to my death, but certainly
seriously injured, yeah.
Seriously injured. And I've been in I did the same thing in Spain where I was in a similar situation, many different situations. I got malaria 6 times in Africa. There were, other things like that.
That time in Madagascar, did that make you reflect, saying, okay, maybe I'm taking too many risks here? Or were you just, that was lucky, let me grab onto the next grass?
Or was it just c'est la vie and on you go?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like, we all of us, we go to travel all over the world, and there's places that we go to that are kind of sketchy. And maybe a little bit close calls here and there.
We all have our comfort level,
right,
no doubt.
Right. And so I guess I shrugged that one off because it wasn't super close call. I got within a couple of degrees with malaria, but by then it's
really
already
sick.
too late. It's like, well, shit. How can you protect yourself? It's hard.
Yeah.
But
so you're very intentional with your travel.
Yes.
And you're very adventurous with your travel.
Correct.
And very outdoor oriented.
Correct. Yeah. Because I find that the most enjoyable. Some people get a lot of enjoyment out of food. Some people do language learning. Some people love travel for the museums. I do like all these things too, but I think what I get most of all, at least now in this stage of my life, while I'm still kind of physically able, that I'm enjoying that outdoor stuff quite a bit. But
once you get older, you might get more into the food scene.
More museums, less mountains.
That's right.
Exactly.
But the other thing I'm really interested is that I really like the understanding cultures. Like I like to understand how do men and women how are men and women treated in a culture? How are children raised in a culture? So in my books, I write a lot about that as well.
And obviously you can experience that more when you're there for an extended period of time versus
exactly. And so for example, I've given 3 TEDx talks, and in my last one, I had a talk that was called Picking Up 3,000 African Hitchhikers. So during my 5 years of Africa, I picked up about 3,000 hitchhikers. And what happened is that they would come into my car and they would often in the sunset say, "Where are you sleeping?" I'm like, "I have no idea." And they would invite me to their home. And so then all of a sudden I'm hanging out with some random African family. I get to see 3 generations, the grandmother, the all living under one roof, and really get to understand different African cultures that way.
Some people might think, oh, I would never pick up a hitchhiker in Africa because, it's so dangerous. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, it's not so dangerous because I picked up 3,000.
Yeah.
And it's not so bad. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned a lot. And I think the more you travel, the more you realize the world is not as scary as the place as we think it is. And so that's certainly true in my case. That's why at this point when I hear people saying, oh, no, I'm sure I could go to Ukraine right now. And it's probably not as bad as we think of it. As there's probably lots of safe places there. And so that's one thing that you learn, I think, from travel, is that the world is a safer place, that most people tend to be good.
And 99.999% of all people in the world, they want to be nice.
That's right. And they're mostly helpful. I mean, Palle, you've done a lot of travels all over the world, and people have helped you all the way. They stepped out of their way to
Palle
help
slept in my house.
There you go. See?
He talks to my kids.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. And my kids always ask me, how's Palle doing?
Yeah.
And when I was in Saudi Arabia, I met so many nice people. I met a perfectly random stranger that insisted on paying for stuff in a gas station for breakfast because they didn't take a Visa card or a MasterCard. So he said, I'll pay for you. I said, no, I can't let you do that. Yeah, sure. What do you want? So you meet kind people so many in the most unexpected places.
Patty and I had that happen to us on a business trip in China where this was another business many, many years ago, and we were definitely on a wing and a prayer to Hong Kong. And we had intentionally spent all of our Chinese money, our Chinese yuan, they called it at the time. Yeah. It was right before the Chinese dollar or a Hong Kong dollar. It was right before the handover, so it was Hong Kong dollar. Yeah. So we intentionally spent all of our money because we couldn't take it back with us. It wouldn't be worth anything. And at the airport, we didn't know they had a tax you had to pay in cash to get out of the airport.
And only their currency.
Yes, and we didn't have any money. And the next person in line said, I'll pay it for you, don't worry. Because we were just starting to look at each other like, right. Are we going to be stuck here?
Yeah. And that's the random acts of kindness that you find all over the world, which is amazing.
Which happens in travel. Yeah. And I'm sure we've all got many, many, many more stories just like that.
Right.
But Francis, let's talk a little bit about your session here.
Yes.
It was about keeping focus.
Right. Laser focus. So
which Palle are not good at. Palle and I.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why I went to the TikTok thing at the same time.
Right. That's right.
I went back and forth.
So what I talked in TBEX was to encourage people to be laser focused and not be a shotgun. Because we tend to, especially when at the early stages of a business or a content creator, we have a tendency to want to solve all problems, do everything. We have a vision that's very broad, which is good, but we start off broad. Whereas to be successful, you have to start off more niche. That's, TBEX. Imagine if TBEX wanted to, from the get-go, be everything to all people and everything. No, instead, you have a narrow focus of people who are travel content creators and businesses. It's a narrow focus, and you can build on that. And instead, you create more conferences, right?
Yes.
And that's the way you build a business properly, and you expand from there. Eventually, TBEX could grow into broader categories if it wants to, because right now it's
do that right. Okay.
Yeah, you finally
Thank
did.
You, Francis.
Rick, you did one thing right in your life.
Thank you.
So the point is that that's the way. And I think too often people are too eager to jump ahead.
Yes.
And I'm trying to tell people, put on the brakes, narrow the focus on your niche, and be very specific about it, and funnel all your energy and resources on that niche, and then establish a beachhead, and from there, expand.
Is there some kind of psychology involved in that where people might be a little too scattered because they're afraid of failing at the thing that they really want to do? Where you see them getting distracted doing this and that instead of the thing that, is really their mission.
Yeah, because the problem is money is tempting. Right? And so all of a sudden somebody dangles a few dollar bills in front of you that takes you away from your main purpose or passion. Oh, but it's easy money. You just go off in that direction. And that may not be what you really like, but you're like, but I just need this money. It's $1,000 or whatever. Until you go off and do that, and you can lead yourself to distraction. Then 2 months later, somebody else offers you $1,000, $2,000, and you go off in a different direction. And that
now
it
you're
takes
completely
discipline
off
to
the
say
path.
no. Right, and you're totally off the path. And so it takes a lot of discipline, I think, to say no and keep on track.
And on the same token, it takes a lot of discipline to have one core target group.
Absolutely.
Who do you want your readers, your followers to be?
Right.
And obviously, most people would say, oh, anybody.
Right.
From the young teenager to the retired
Right.
old guy. But if it's a good idea to have a laser focus on who your core target is.
Especially at the beginning. And a lot of people at TBEX, they're either bloggers who come here or content creators who are just getting started, or they're still learning, and they need to realize that focus is very important. Same thing with businesses. They've got a hotel chain, they've got some sort of travel business. They need to understand, don't go off in 3 directions at once. Save that to later, and be patient. Be patient to expand.
And since Francis went to Harvard Business School, he must be right.
Yeah.
So we're going to listen to him.
And I actually stole this idea, not just from Harvard Business School. They taught us that in the marketing classes, but also they taught us in our strategy classes. But they also taught me that in Silicon Valley, when I was working in Silicon Valley, that Silicon Valley is a graveyard full of people that fall into the chasm. The chasm is going from the early adopters and innovators who are willing to put up with the hotel whose lights don't work, who doesn't always have hot water. Those are like the innovators.
Yeah.
Versus the mainstream, the early majority, who wants things to basically work.
Yes.
And a full, complete product, soup to nuts.
Yes.
Turnkey solutions. That's what they're looking for.
Yes.
In between that is the chasm.
Yeah.
And so these companies, they get going, and they got these innovators, and then they want to get into the mainstream, but they don't have a whole
They try to
product.
jump too soon.
They try to jump too soon, so they fall into the chasm.
Evil Knievel.
And then they burn through their cash, and they fail. And that's what they taught me in Silicon Valley, at Harvard Business School, and it's kind of a lesson that I hope to bring here at TBEX to help people avoid that kind of pain and suffering.
I'm really glad somebody asked this guy to speak here at TBEX.
You did 2 things right.
So, Francis, this is your first TBEX.
Yes, and it's great.
What are your impressions so far?
Oh, it's fabulous. I mean, it's like, when you travel, especially like for the last 5 years, I've been traveling to all 54 African countries, and you definitely feel quite alone. Well, you've been to many African countries yourself, Palle, and you feel alone, like you're the only guy who's
Stranger in a strange land.
to like go out there.
Especially when I was in Burundi.
Right. In Burundi, you're sitting there like, I'm the only guy here. And so it's so fun to come and so, like your tribe, your long-lost family tribe is just like, they're all here in Andalusia, in Marbella. It's like, Marbella.
Yeah, my first time was like, oh my God, I'm with my people.
Yes,
It's
you're with
like,
your people, yeah.
They get me.
You don't have to explain what you do to these people.
No.
They get it.
That's right, they get it. Exactly right.
Yeah. And they can
go ar-
empathize with
Right.
your
And
experience.
And so many
Absolutely.
people go around with a camera in front of their face, and it's like, okay, it's not weird to do that here.
Do you guys remember the flip camera when it came out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was at a very early podcasting conference, one of the first or second year, and it just came out, and there were like 10 of us standing in a circle with our flip cameras all pointed at each other, just geeking out, where you go anywhere down the street and nobody else would know what the heck you were doing.
Exactly right.
Right.
Exactly right.
Now that's old. For younger people listening, they've never even heard of a flip camera, right? That's come and gone. But that was such a cool thing for about a year.
Yeah, about a year. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what's next for you?
Next for me, I'm going to go back to Africa. From here, so I came to Marbella through the ferry, but I want to go back for
Morocco.
another 3 months in Morocco, take the ferry back, because I'm a masochist and I haven't finished my damn book. So I'm writing a book about Africa, 54 chapters, 1 chapter per country, and it's not 100% done yet. So I find that Africa is a little bit better environment to write that in. It's also less expensive to live than
Less distractions.
Yeah. But I might be going to San Diego, by the way, because my wife right now she's coming from a deployment. She's in the U.S. Navy, and she's going to be coming back in San Diego, the port of San Diego.
Okay, yep.
So I'll go knock on your door
Well,
and sleep on your
absolutely
floor,
come
too.
sleep on our couch.
You better do it before he moves.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
moving.
Because that's
When are you
that's
moving?
another
1
breaking
month.
news.
In about a month.
Okay, so I guess I won't see you.
I've lived there my whole life, and I'm moving in about a month.
Yeah,
Wow.
he just casually mentioned it to me yesterday.
Where are you
and
going to?
Utah.
Utah.
He's
Okay,
gonna
good choice.
he's gonna become
Why
a Mormon.
Utah? What did,
Completely by accident. It's a really long story. We'll
Okay,
talk about
okay.
it another time. I thought we were moving. I wanted to go to Montana. My wife wanted to go to Texas. We thought we were going to Idaho. We ended up in Utah. So we were not laser focused, Francis, at all. But we really fell in love with the town of Ogden, Utah.
yeah.
Completely by accident, and yeah, we're moving.
So sometime in the summer
Yes.
of 2022.
Yeah, we have two little girls,
Off
so
you
we
go.
want to move before the school
year starts.
It starts again. So yeah, we'll move this summer.
That's exciting. No, congratulations. Yeah. So in the summer, it'll be hot as hell in Morocco.
Yeah.
And that's where I'll be.
Yeah.
And I mean, TBEX is something I've always wanted to go to. And so I'm really honored and pleased that you guys have invited me
Yeah,
here.
for such a big traveler, it's about time.
Yeah, exactly. But it was always like inconvenient on because when I go on my travels, like from the Africa thing, I didn't want to leave the continent for 5 years. So if TBEX was going on in London or wherever, I didn't want to leave the continent.
Yeah.
So, but when Gary Arndt told me there's going to be a TBEX in Zimbabwe, I'm like, okay, I'm not leaving the African continent. I can do that.
And then Mugabe was overthrown, and that kind of messed up our plans. Otherwise, we would have been there.
Right. So it's been a dream of mine to go to TBEX. Is like, this is my conference. This is like where I'll feel at home.
Well, I'm glad to
And
hear
so
that.
I'm just thrilled to be here, and it hasn't let me down in any way. It's fulfilled all my expectations, and I look forward to tomorrow.
Well, thank you.
One final thing.
I have a question too. Sorry.
Okay, you go ahead first.
Okay, and then you can ask the final thing. So, how many books have you written now?
Just 2, so
Okay.
I'm working on my third.
So
The
this will
first
be your
one is
third.
called Hike Your Own Hike. It's about walking the Appalachian Trail and lessons I learned from that. So it's more like a self-help book that anybody can enjoy. And then finally, the second book was about Eastern Europe. One chapter, 25 chapters. One chapter per country, 25 chapters total. And it's a big book, but I'm updating it now because of the Russia-Ukraine situation. I have to update it because things have changed a bit. And then my third book will be about Africa. And I hope that comes out next year.
And I'm sorry,
inshallah.
one other related thing, Palle.
Yeah.
So, what social channels can people find you on?
So, if you remember how do you spell my name again?
TAPPON.
No. It's Tampon without the M.
Right, TAPON.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So I'm making this very visual and easy for your
Yes.
listeners to remember. So F, for my first name is Francis, so F Tapon is what I use for all my social media. F Tapon is it. And-
Laser focus.
I will put that in the show notes.
Great. And your final thing, Palle?
It was exactly what Rick asked.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Palle.
It was exactly the same.
I do that all the time.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Francis.
Francis,
and
thank
I'm
you.
so glad to get to know you. And
Likewise.
Such a pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you, Francis.
See all the links mentioned in this episode in the show notes and on tbexcon.com/podcast.
So, Palle, you heard my pen clicking.
Yeah.
Because I'll always be fidgeting with something. I've never... You know, they make these things now, the fidget spinners.
Oh, Rick, that was 5 years ago.
Okay, but my point is, they make these... I don't know if they call them fidget toys or fidget whatever. They're just things that you can do with your hands when you're talking and idly thinking about something. And I don't have any of those.
No.
But I'll click my pen or click the button on my mouse, or I'm always doing something.
Yeah.
I can't stay 100% still. But anyway.
Yeah, you've seen my notes on my iPad. I doodle.
Yes. And I can't draw or barely write, so I don't doodle.
No, but you were saying that the microphone is so good that I could hear the pin, and I think I can hear something else.
You hear my girls in the background, yeah.
Exactly, and
I'm watching them right now.
Yeah, and I
Well, Angie's off at an appointment.
Yeah, and I specifically don't want you to close the door because I like having the girls in the background. It brings a nice family feel to the whole thing.
Girls who love their Uncle Palle.
Exactly. So that was Francis Tapon, and now it's time for Michael Collins, and I don't even think we need to say anything else about Michael.
Yeah, let's talk to Michael about Google and Facebook and cookies and all sorts of other interesting things. I think one more thing, Palle. We also talked about Elon Musk taking over Twitter.
Yeah, and I haven't really been following the news, but something might have happened since we had that conversation with Michael.
Well, it's been on and off and on and off. And the latest is a story that it's off. I don't think that's true. I think it's just negotiating, but we'll see.
The last time, Rick, that we had this guest on, we were talking about he needs no introduction, but we can't go through a TBEX without having this guy.
Michael Collins.
Oh, that's his name. Thank you.
Michael, just for people who don't know, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself quickly?
So I've been in this game for 20 years, as in the travel and media game.
You were a publisher.
Yeah, started off as a print journalist. Could see kind of by 06 where things were going, and by 09 it got out of print. Still a fan of print, but as a niche market for publishing, really tricky. So I'd started a PR agency, and then within about 5-6 years of starting that PR agency, by 2012, let's say, I decided to pivot and become a digital PR agency. So everything we do is travel related, PR related, but with a serious focus on digital and social and so on. Now, we've two kind of sister parts to the company. We have an events part as well. We run events in Ireland. And we have a trade part, so we do trade representation. So one member of our team just works with the trade, as in travel agents, tour operators. But most of our work is social and digital and PR.
Great. And so we have Michael speak at the conference almost every time. And you always have interesting, memorable things to say. And I got a chance to actually sit in on your session yesterday, and I wrote down a couple of notes of things that you said. So one of the things I saw in your talk, one of the notes I wrote down was travel can't compete with the outrage model of social media. What did you mean by that?
So my point is that the underlying business model of social media, forget about the technology and the platforms, but the business model in terms of how these companies make money is based on outrage or based on conflict.
How Facebook and Twitter, etc. make money.
The more people disagree each other, the more shouting is, the more noise there is, the more the misinformation that there is, the more people engage, as in they get outraged, they react, unfortunately. And I don't think that's a good environment for any of us, full stop, nothing to do with travel. But unfortunately, that's what those social media companies have done. I don't know that Facebook and others set out to do that, but that's what's happened.
And travel is such a feel-good industry.
Yeah, it's a happy, make people feel happy, give them something to look forward to, the joy of travel, of meeting new people, discovering new places. It just makes it very hard for travel to compete. The only place where, and I didn't mention this, is probably Instagram is a great platform for travel because it's all image-led. But Facebook in particular, Twitter, unfortunately, it's just, I don't think it's a great place at the moment.
What can be done about that?
Well, it's interesting. Elon Musk, as we speak, is still in the throes of, trying to buy Twitter. But the question is he really trying to buy it? Is he just causing havoc? Because that's what he does.
And if it does, will that make it better or worse?
I don't know. I think he's a technologist. He's not a humanist. He's not a journalist. I don't think he actually understands what he's trying to buy. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. He said some interesting things, I think, that maybe are good, and that he'll open up the algorithm, because nobody knows how any of these algorithms work. So if he does that, that'd be interesting. But I hope he doesn't ruin it, because I think Twitter is quite unique.
I disagree, by the way.
Excellent.
I think it's a great thing. Even if he doesn't buy Twitter, he's already made Twitter better.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw this morning, I saw the news. They are going to release the private data to him to prove how many fake followers they have on Twitter.
That's good.
Twitter just got better today.
Yeah, and in fairness, as an agency, we get approached by a lot of media, or clients come to us and say, we're thinking of working with these media. And part of what we do is we analyze those media. And we use a lot of tools to look at who their followers are and how they built them up. And Twitter is one of the very problematic ones because a lot of people buy followers. And it's not too difficult with those tools to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Like a good social media person has built that audience over years, steady and sure. When you see big jumps of tens of thousands of followers, you know what's going on.
Yeah, it's an indicator.
And Twitter is one of those where it's always problematic. And we always, even with the best of people, we find issues. So agreed, that is a good thing, yes.
So not to pick on Twitter, my headline from your talk was, the Facebook advertising model is broken. I don't think it works. They're not delivering what they're promising.
Yeah.
So you're not going to make any friends at Facebook with that, but I agree with you 100%. So what do you mean by that?
Well, so here's the irony. We still use Facebook. It does work to a certain extent, but it is broken at the same time, and both are possible.
The reach is phenomenal. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Well, if you spend, the audience Well, one is starting to fall. So Facebook, for the first time this year, reported a drop in numbers. The next month it bumped back, but the next month it fell down again. So that's something to take note of. They are losing numbers.
And by the way...
And TikTok is just, it's incredible
exploding.
what they're doing.
But I'll interject. The reason Twitter has lost users, the reason they have so many dead accounts, inactive users, the reason Facebook has so many inactive users is because of that outrage machine that you mentioned, that hostile environment. People just don't want to see it.
It's not good for your mental health.
So while they're generating traffic and they're generating time spent on the platform for the people who are engaged, the other people that don't want that, they're just chasing them right off the platform.
Yeah, I mean, look, one reason I like Twitter, and I'm a fan of Elon Musk. I'm just not sure he understands what he's buying, but I am a fan. Yeah. So him buying it has a lot of potential, a lot of upside. One reason I love Twitter is that it's really popular with media.
Yeah.
And I'm in that space. So
it's a great media feed if you use it correctly.
It's a great platform if you're in the media world.
Yeah.
But in terms of, go back to your question, why is Facebook broken? A number of reasons. One, they started out with good intentions. They've got to a very bad place. They know it. The challenge is that part of what they committed to, or part of that promise, was we know who our users are. Are they married? Are they getting engaged? Are they just got married? Do they have kids? Where do they go to college? How old they are? Which is invaluable information as a marketeer or as a DMO. The problem is that everybody trusted them too much, and it was too good to be true to a certain extent. So that's one of the problems. And they went after the small advertiser who couldn't afford television and radio and traditional media, and it gave them an opportunity to market. One of the challenges I have is that their metrics are not good, that the metrics that you can therefore trust on, say, Google Analytics out of Facebook are not good because Google doesn't like Facebook. So you might find social traffic hidden in other traffic or all sorts of other areas. So the only way to really measure it is proper tracking codes. So we use UTM tracking, which is kind of the industry standard. But the problem is most people don't use it because they don't have the time or the resources.
So that's a third-party tracking tool to see what kind of results you're actually getting.
But you know exactly every click. And the other problem is that people have just bought into Facebook too much, and they're using it, and they're spending money, but not using it for the right reason. We use it purely as a distribution tool. For our own company, for our client companies, it's the website that they own. That's where you want everybody to end up. Trying to create engagement just within the Facebook platform only delivers for Facebook. So I don't get it.
Yeah, I agree.
The point of my talk yesterday was I was warning people, saying, look, you need to be a bit more cautious. Don't believe everything you're told. And, validate everything and do your research after you've done a campaign and use the really good tracking tools that are out there, because there's been enough media and analysis out there to show that there is a lot of spam going on, there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of, click bots going on, there's all sorts of issues. So just be a bit more cautious.
Another thing you said is social is a distribution channel to drive traffic back to our website. I know you've been saying variations of this for years. I've been saying the same thing for years. Again, I don't think we can say it enough because we've had a whole new generation of content creators evolve since COVID, and a whole new generation of industry people come since COVID. So what do you mean by that?
Well, so here, when we launch, for example, a new product page for a client on their website, or we put up a new blog on our website or another website for a client, one of the first things we want to do is send some indicators to Google that this is a new page and it's active and people are going to it. So you update your site index, you submit that Search Console to Google. There's now an API where you can do that automatically. Sante was talking about that yesterday. But you need more than a few kind of signals coming in. So social is a very good signal. Even though Google doesn't report social very well, it acknowledges it and understands it. So the first thing we'll do is take a link, drop it into social, and put some money behind it and send some traffic back. So then social sends traffic in, and it sends people back to our website, which is where we can engage with them, and we can capture then some zero first-party data, which is much more valuable than having somebody on Facebook. So 100,000 followers on Facebook is useless because Facebook owns them. You don't, and if you want to get to them, you pay to get to them.
Yep.
So we consider social as just
even if they follow you, you still have to pay to reach them.
Yeah. So it's for us, it's a distribution tool, but it's one of many distribution tools. So all of the social media channels are distribution tools. Newswire is a distribution tool. Email marketing is a distribution tool. I'm still a huge fan of email marketing. As a company, it's our most powerful tool, actually. So it's always one of many. And when we distribute content, it'll take us a day because we spend the whole day distributing across multiple channels. Social's not the be-all and end-all. It's just one of many.
So, again, it cannot be said enough. For content creators and small business owners, more than anything else, your website and your mailing list, your email, that's the only thing you own. And everything you do should be driving traffic to your list, to your website. So when Facebook decides to cut you off, or Twitter changes the way they work, or Google changes their algorithm, you still own your list.
Yep.
You still... And another thing you talked about in your talk, and we won't get into this for time reasons, was first-party, second-party, third-party data, how cookies are going away. So if you want to hear that stuff, you can get it on the virtual ticket, which has all the session recordings from including Michael Collins' session, and that'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, but we won't go into details. As you say, we don't have time, and it's a big area, but zero-party data is data that you own that's come direct between you and your customer. So it's an email address. It's their name. That's really what you want to capture, and that's what's incredibly valuable now that the world of cookies is disappearing.
Yep.
So the world is going to revert and suddenly going, okay, there is no more third-party data. Those data sets and audiences are disappearing. And I think DMOs, if they're smart, will start to talk to bloggers and influencers who have really good zero-party data. But you can't just have it for the sake of having it. It needs to be good, well-structured, well-managed, etc.
Active and engaged.
Yeah, but also just well-managed. So I think that's a huge opportunity.
Michael, thank you as always for joining us. Thank you for being here at TBEX. Thank you for being such a friend to us as a company and to the community of creators that come to TBEX.
Thank you, Rick. Always a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you, Palle.
So that was it for this week's episode. That came out a little bit too late, but never mind. We will have another episode, another exciting episode next week. We have a guest from Argentina.
Ferita
Catalano.
He was so fun to have at the show because, he live streams a lot.
He live streams all the time, and he did that the last time I met him at TBEX Ostrava in the Czech Republic, and he was always going around with his camera on a gimbal, live streaming to his audience, and he has so many followers that it's ridiculous.
And I just love his whole concept. Forgive me if I say this wrong. It's il decidido. Means you decide. His followers tell him where to go, which is a pretty cool idea. And, he has the resources to do it. So we're very fortunate to have him join us in Marbella, Spain last month.
The only thing that I'm a bit bummed about is that he does it in...
He does English.
He does English as well?
Yeah, he does English as well.
Huh, okay.
But yeah, mostly it's in Spanish, yeah.
Yeah, but that's coming up in next week's installment of Travel Matters, and by then we're gonna pre-record that intro, because when this comes out, you'll be probably on your way to Utah.
On the road.
Enjoy packing, Rick.
Thank you. It's so much fun.
See you.
We'll see you next week.
This episode of Travel Matters was hosted by TBEX CEO Rick Calvert and Radio Vagabond Palle, and produced by radioguru.co.uk. See more about upcoming TBEX events on tbexcon.com. You can follow Palle on the radiovagabond.com.